Welcome everybody. This is News from the Heart with Swami Chetanananda, my teacher. We're filming at the Movement Center in Portland, Oregon, and we are going to be asking Swami some questions that we hope are meaningful to you. We've opened it up to receive questions from students, so these are some of them. Yes.
Good morning, Natasha.
Hi, Swami.
Very nice to be with you this morning.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
You know, it's my pleasure.
Okay. So, Swami, one of the questions that came up is people are wondering, how do you know, or how can you know if your spiritual practice is working or if you're doing it right?
If you're feeling better, it's working and you're doing it right. I think the thing about spiritual practice is, and not just spiritual practice, all religious practice. Anything you want to talk about as religious or spiritual begins with a simple, good feeling that we begin to experience in ourselves. You know, we've had this conversation before, you know, and you've heard me say to you that the reason why we do yoga, the reason why we keep doing yoga, is because it feels really good to do it. And it is that simple good feeling that becomes available to us when we move our bodies and in the process of moving our bodies facilitate more flow within ourselves. It is that process of flowing that allows this simple good feeling to be present. And if we understand and discipline ourselves, not in a heavy way, but just discipline ourselves to continually create a life that supports that good feeling and to do things that allow us to experience that good feeling, then our spiritual, our inner life will grow. It will expand. And as it expands, we will find we are more intelligent. We will find that the quality of our relationships is richer. We will find that there is less tension and more love less tension and more love in ourselves as we struggle less, and less tension and more love between us, you know, as we cultivate and share that good feeling. You know, if you have relationships based on fear and tension, what happens in those relationships? They create stress, you know, and conflict, and ultimately fall apart. When you feel good in yourself and you relate to other people from that good feeling, and you value that good feeling in yourself and you hold it as you relate to people, then relationships are better. As there is more flow in us, then there becomes more flow possible between us and everybody in our lives. And as there is more flow between us and everybody, the range of the flow extends itself greater and greater. I started out with one student. I have thousands now. And as that flow increases, you know, our awareness of the dimension of the divine that permeates us in our whole life becomes increasingly clear. And we understand who we really are and why we're really here. And you know, our whole life experience, I mean, it's still ups and downs and struggles, and there's still sometimes some pain and confusion, but our whole life experience becomes steady in the simple good feeling that is the same feeling that was available to us the very first day we began to practice yoga.
So you mentioned that relationships that have fear and tension tend to, collapse the relationship. What would you recommend for people who have those kind of relationships with their family members or at work, where you have very little control over? You can't just, walk away from the relationship. But what would you say for there's no pathway to actually have a conversation about it with the person?
Well, first of all, I would never say there is no. I would say there's always a pathway. There is just very often an undiscovered pathway, which we discover by cultivating that good feeling in ourselves and instead of fighting with people or building up a big resistance to them, we just accept a bunch of crazy people into our life, and we love them anyway, or at least we like them anyway. And sometimes people try to hurt us. Sometimes people, break the connection. Sometimes they break the relationship. Sometimes they, do bad things. Well, okay, then in that case, you have to step way back. And maybe you have to protect yourself. But in general, we want to try to have a flow as much as we can with everybody in our life. We want to try to live with love, not, fear or anger. And we want to take the long term, the long view, the big picture perspective, and we want to just try day by day to change the circumstance and allow for more understanding. It's like with Trump getting elected as president, I realized that there's a bunch of people out there who voted for this guy. And even though I have my own strong personal feelings about it, they voted for him for a reason. And I have to be willing to hear what they have to say. And I have to be willing to take their beliefs and their concerns into my own perspective, into my own worldview. And, I have to be willing to hear stuff that I might think is crazy. I might, totally not want to hear it. But I have to learn to live with all that stuff and live with it comfortably, And because really what in my life, what I'm trying to do and what we're all trying to do is promote communication, promote flow. So one interesting thing, for instance, is that one of the pathways to thinking about this is to think about it in terms of yamas and niyamas. Now, yamas and niyamas are the first two limbs of the 8-limbed yoga system that is classical yoga called. And the yamas and the niyamas talk to us about how we have to manage ourselves and what our attitude needs to be toward others. And it's not like this is a rule, but these are the suggestions. So this idea of, managing ourself for better flow and managing our relationships with the world for better flow is not my idea. It's a very, very ancient idea. And maybe in the old days, these ideas were expressed as yamas and niyamas, and they had certain kinds of form. And over time, people read this over and over again, and they think, this is the rule, that's the rule. Well, it's not a rule. It's a suggestion. The ideas, if you understand the basic ideas flow, then these are the suggestions to help you. And as you develop yourself in your own practice of yoga, or whatever your practice is, if you are focused on that simple good feeling in yourself and sharing that feeling with the people whom you live your life with, then your spiritual practice is going to be growing, and you are doing it right. I've got more toolboxes, for growing than most people have books in their house. And any one of those tools, is a perfectly good tool. You can use any one of those tools to get to. You can have them all if you want, no problem, but any one of them is going to work. So what is it that works for you, that brings you consistently, that reminds you consistently to come into connection with that simple good feeling that is ever present in you? Then you build your life around that. Then that good feeling becomes who you are, and the life that you build around that becomes the vessel which grows, but increasingly holds grace and blessings for you and everybody you love.